Our next guest is the senator from my own home state of Michigan, who's going to give us a little bit of perspective on what's happening on the Senate side here. Please welcome Michigan Senator Gary Peters.
Hello.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Yeah, good to see you.
Well, we heard a little bit earlier from Representative Latta about the toll that is taken on our roads. 40,000, I think it was 43,000 killed last year. It's really unacceptable. And so autonomous vehicles can help with that, and also with accessibility issues. But I know you also see it as kind of a national security issue. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, but let me first start with the safety, because to me that is the principal reason that we need to focus on this technology. As you said, 43,000 people is carnage, and then just think of the debilitating injuries, which goes to a number vastly larger than that. It's just unacceptable that that's happening on our highways. And we know even before we get to fully autonomous vehicles on our highways, the technologies that get us there will also save lives along the way. So this is a continuum that will continue to impact people's lives in a very real way. So I think that should be our major focus. But from a competitive standpoint, there's no question that it is absolutely essential that this technology get developed here and deployed here in the United States. We're facing significant international competition from other countries that understand that autonomy represents the future of mobility. Not only the future of mobility, but it drives other technologies in a significant way. As one engineer told me, that basically self-driving cars is the moonshot for artificial intelligence, that when AI is able to process the massive amount of data that comes in from all of those sensors and drive a vehicle safely through New York City or Washington, D.C., that means AI has developed a significant degree. And that'll give a competitive advantage in just about every industry there is that country is involved in. We know the Chinese, for example, are investing massive amounts of money in AI. They understand that from an economic competitive standpoint, they want to be the center of AI. They want to be the center of mobility. They're testing their vehicles right now, and many companies are testing those vehicles here in the United States. They're developing that technology, and I want to make sure that we are at the forefront of that and are the economic leader, especially from Michigan, to make sure that our domestic automakers are at the forefront of that is critical for jobs and critical for us to make sure that our technology is cutting edge globally.
And really, you mentioned it, the technology was invented here. The leading companies are here. The Chinese are testing here, and yet we feel this risk. What is China doing? What is it about China that they are doing that we are not doing in the U.S. and we should be doing?
Well, they're allowing the innovation to move forward, get them on the road. And so that's what we have to do. We have to be able to put a regulatory framework in place so that we can scale up and make sure that our auto manufacturers can scale to a level that makes economic sense for them, also allows them to collect more data. The more vehicles you get on the road, the more information you get, the more that you can design those systems in order to handle a variety of conditions that you're going to have. So I think that the impediment we have right now is the fact we don't have that kind of regulatory certainty for auto companies in the United States to go beyond the testing phase and start scaling up. Mm-hmm. The Chinese can do that in China a lot easier. They can scale up in China because their regulatory system, let's say, works a whole lot differently than what we have here in the United States, which gives them a competitive advantage in that respect. I think we have a competitive advantage with the quality of our engineers, and the ability to innovate in this country is absolutely unparalleled. But we've got to make sure that the regulatory framework allows that to flourish in a way that also is safe. Going back to our initial comments, we want to make sure we're deploying these in a safe manner as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, you were a co-sponsor of the AV START Act, which I think was all the way back in 2017. Yeah. There was similar legislation on the House side. Nothing has passed through Congress yet. Do you see an opportunity now, given the heightened interest in AI, you were involved with the CHIPS Act, for instance, is there a heightened opportunity to get this legislation finally passed?
Well, I don't know if the legislation will look, I don't think it'll look like what we had in 2017. We've had a lot of discussions with folks since then. So things are evolving. I think we need to look at every possible avenue to put forward a plan that'll give some certainty for folks as to what the regulatory environment will look like, whether it's legislation, whether it's rulemaking, whether it's other actions that the Department of Transportation can take. I talk to Secretary Buttigieg on a regular basis about this subject. He usually knows if I'm calling. One of the items I'm going to bring up will be self-driving cars. There'll be other ones I'll probably talk to him about, but that will be there. And they've made meaningful steps. They're looking at having an Office of Automation and other things that are coming along the lines that I think are very important. But clearly, folks understand that this has to get done, but there are other people that have concerns. I heard the discussion earlier about jobs. Obviously, folks are concerned about the employment impact of this. People are concerned if you get self-driving cars out too quickly, is that a safety concern? I mean, these are serious issues that need to be addressed, and we're working aggressively right now to try to navigate that and figure out what is the best path for us to move forward, because time is not on our side. The longer it takes to get that kind of regulatory certainty, you're going to see companies perhaps back off on these significant investments. And if they do that, that will put us behind a considerable degree, and it'll be really tough to try to catch up.
So it sounds like you expect more progress to happen quicker on the rulemaking side rather than legislation.
I don't know, because rulemaking is not easy either. So I don't know if it's that either, but we're looking at a variety of avenues right now pretty aggressively.
Well, tell me some of these ideas. You mentioned an Office of Automation in the DOT. What would that look like?
Well, it starts to coordinate the information about automation, what that's going to mean, what sort of things that we need to be doing. You're seeing the Department of Transportation did change a rule on crashworthiness, for example, that says that, yeah, you can demonstrate crashworthiness without having a human being involved, which is important because a human being in a self-driving car is not driving the car with brakes and steering wheel. So that is a rulemaking that is a step in the direction of where we have to go in thinking about automobiles as not just human-centric, but perhaps much broader than that. And so I think you could continue to go down some of those avenues. But ultimately, you have to bring some certainty that auto manufacturers know that they can produce more of these vehicles and put more of these vehicles on the road, which I fully support.
Right. Well, we've seen the Cruise robo-taxi in the back room. Zoox has a similar driverless, purpose-built robo-taxi. Others are working on them. Waymo has shown one. All of these vehicles currently do not meet the federal motor vehicle safety standards. And I'm wondering, do you think that the robo-taxis should be designed to meet those laws, or should the laws be changed for these new class of vehicles?
Well, some of it's because they don't meet it because they don't have a human. They don't have brake pedals and steering wheels and things of that nature. So clearly that has to
probably don't need windshield wipers either, right?
Probably not. Unless you make sure your cameras are
sensors
are working, and make sure that they're not impeded in any way. But actually, this technology is clearly here and it's working in a good way. And I think legislators need to be exposed to that. I'm glad the vehicle is here. I think we need to demonstrate that more. I had the opportunity to ride. I've ridden in self-driving cars for quite a few years, but the first time actually in a commercial setting with Cruise. It's operating in San Francisco right now. You can pull up an app and have your Cruise self-driving car pick you up, take you to another location, and there's not a driver in it. There's no safety driver. I did this fairly recently with my wife, and
were you afraid?
I wasn't. She was not real excited about it, to be honest with you. My wife is not, although she feels a lot better now. So that's the end of the story. We're jumping ahead of the story. So she was a little concerned about that. But we get in the car came up, we jumped in, and no driver in the car, and went through the streets of San Francisco, and lots of people. It was in the evening too. They're allowed to operate only at night, so I think it was probably 11 o'clock at night that we were in the car. But it was smooth. We made the turns. It stopped for where there were so many kind of hazards. It was really a great ride. And then we got out, and what I thought was most interesting is that as we got out of the car, then we wanted to watch it as it went off to get its next customer who had called it up on the app. And it was, at that point, 11:30 at night or so it's dark. There was a car in front of us. We got out, the Cruise car went around, and then as soon as that car came out, a guy walked between the car, a pedestrian, right in front of the car, and it immediately slammed on its brakes. It was like instant, boom. And of course, the guy was startled. He looked and he saw a car with absolutely nobody in the car that just stopped instantly in front of him and then proceeded on his way. And then the car went off. And I'll tell you, I don't know if a human would have reacted that quick, especially 11:30 at night, the lighting, and who knows where they were, have been beforehand, who knows.
Yeah.
But that shows you that this technology is here, and let's seize that moment and start moving forward. But let people see what is actually there, and then go back to how we started this conversation from a safety perspective. It literally will save thousands of people's lives, as well as prevent debilitating injuries. So this is something that Congress needs to focus on, and we got to make sure people understand where we are.
All right, you mentioned jobs. Let's go to California right now. Has a bill that's working its way through the assembly there that would ban self-driving trucks. And the Teamsters are among the sponsors of this law. Understandably, they're worried about jobs. I have two questions. One, what do you think about truck driver jobs and how, what happens to those truck drivers? And two, should the states be allowed to pass individual laws, yay or nay, on this technology?
Well, there's some things that states would be involved in when it comes to actually on their roadways. So states have always had the ability to do that. But generally, we need to federalize as much as we possibly can to make sure this is national technology that goes across the roads all across
Trucks
the state.
go, long distance. They have to be able to
Absolutely.
drive in every state.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you can't make a delivery in California.
Right. So I think part of it is getting the kind of acceptance that people understand that this is actually helping folks, not only from a safety perspective, from an economic competitive standpoint, but the jobs issue is very real. So we have to take that with a great deal of seriousness, but also understand it's going to take some time. This is not something that overnight jobs are going to disappear, and I believe the jobs will just be different. They're going to look different than they are. Because this is really, to step back, this is a broader issue about the future of things like artificial intelligence. And we know that AI is a very disruptive technology, but it can also be an opportunity. But we have to think through that right now. I mean, we're looking at AI, and the Goldman Sachs study showed that 40% of legal work can be done by AI. So we're going to have lawyers that are going to be upset about that as well.
And journalists too.
And perhaps, yes, journalists as well. So this is a really important discussion that we're having right now, and it shouldn't be exclusively with autonomous vehicles. It should be broader in our economy and how it changes. Now, I'm not a job apocalypse guy that think that all the jobs are going to disappear and robots are going to be running the world. I don't think that's going to happen, but it'll be different. We'll have different jobs, and the power of human creativity will work with AI systems in order to produce even more productivity and have tremendous opportunities. But it is fraught with some challenges, and we should be very open-eyed about that and wide-eyed and understand that we're going to have to see how that transition will work for folks and make sure. I think we're reminded of who was it that said, in the long run, technology changes benefit everybody. But the problem is in the long run, we're all dead. So the thing is, the short term is important too. What do we do in the short term to make sure that that person who will have a dislocation in their job has the opportunity, even though in the long run we're going to be just fine? Let's get through that period. And the challenge we have is this technology, not just cars, but everything is moving at an exponential rate. And as policymakers, we've not had a deal at an exponential rate. Many in the audience may know that Congress does not act in an exponential rate. We work very slowly, very deliberatively, and we're in a period where it's moving rapidly, which is why I think back to the AV legislation or rulemaking or whatever path we have to provide that kind of flexibility to understand that the technology is likely to move quicker than the regulation, but how do you create flexibility to allow some of that to occur while not sacrificing jobs, not sacrificing safety issues? Those issues are very real.
You mentioned, though, the sort of move faster on regulatory issues. For 6 years now, I don't think there's been a confirmed NHTSA administrator, and President Biden just withdrew his nominee last week or the week before. How can any of this happen without leadership setting the tone at the top?
It's really hard. So we have to have a NHTSA administrator. There's just no question about it. I would hope that the Biden administration would put forward another candidate that they feel comfortable with and who can bring the kind of inspired leadership that we desperately need right now. And we'll take it up in the Senate, and I will work to confirm that individual as quickly as possible, because there's no question this is an impediment.
Absolutely. Well, we're just about out of time. I'm glad you shared your story about riding in Cruise's robo-taxi out in San Francisco. Would you do it again?
Oh, absolutely.
Would your wife?
Yes, she would too. That was the test. She says she's
ready. She's a convert.
Yeah, she really is. And she would question me as I got involved in this back in 2017. She's like, "Really? Is this really gonna?" Like most people, is this really going to happen? And then after the ride, she's like, "Okay, I'm open."
That's great. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time this morning. It was a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll head back out.